Okay, so in order for us to talk about local storage, we'll take kind of a trip to get there, right? So we'll write a page from scratch and we'll see how we can get to local storage. So before I can even get there, I need, at the very least, something I can run in the browser. I want to make an HTML file and with some JavaScript and hook it up so that it can run some JavaScript, right? So that's what I'm going to do. So I didn't do this ahead of time, so you just watch me. We'll do, what do we want to call this? Storage. And then we'll touch index.html. And we'll just do script.js. Very generic names, just because this is a generic nothing project. So we'll open that in VS Code. There we go. Cool, okay. Is it okay if this is dark, or is it easier when it's light? I can't remember.
Dark.
Dark? Yeah. Yeah, that's why I like you guys. Okay. All right. Let me get my terminal here. Okay, does anybody remember the shortcut for me to get a boilerplate? Bang tab. Whoops, not there. How did that even? I don't know what the hell that was. Bang tab. Okay, cool. The only thing I'm going to do right now is just change the title just to make sure we're loading something, loading what we want. So we'll just call this like my local storage page. Cool. And then I'm going to open it in the browser just to make sure it is working. So let's do, open in default browser. Open over here. Let me bring this over. Right, and we have nothing on our page, but we know that it's definitely loading our HTML1 because we can see up in the tab, that's what this title is. My local storage page showed up. Also, when we load a file in the browser, instead of the URL, we'll get the path, right? So we can see the path directly to my file. Cool, so now I need to hook up some JavaScript to this. So how do I hook up this JavaScript file so that it'll load when I load this HTML file? Yeah, and we got to put it down at the bottom. Why? Yeah, because it reads from top to bottom. And if later, right away, this won't matter because we're just going to be printing variables. But later, if we wanted to access any of the DOM, which is really what people were using JavaScript for when it was first invented. That's like what it was first invented for, right? It was to like grab these elements, react to things that the user was doing in the browser, stuff like that, right? So if we ever want to do anything like that, we have to make sure those things exist before we run any of this code. So now I'm going to do source and just provide it the path to my file, which is do / I think script.js. And then I can make sure this is running by just doing console.log. All right, so we'll come back here. I'm going to open the console, inspect. We'll see nothing, right? Because we're actually still running the HTML page from before. I have not refreshed, right, and gotten my changes. So if I refresh, there's my hello. I always like doing that because the amount of times I've written like a ton of code and then tried to run it and be like, why isn't it doing it? Why isn't it doing it? It's just because I didn't hook it up right? So just making sure I hooked it up right. Cool. Okay. So now we have that. Take a look. Okay, so how much did we talk about the console yesterday down here? What is this console? Magic. It's a way for us to interact. So it's a little bit like, remember when we have the Python REPL, right? It's a tiny bit like this, not exactly. It's actually more powerful than this. But it's a way for us to interact with our page and write some JavaScript and run JavaScript right directly in the browser. Write it and run it almost in a REPL way, right? We can write it and evaluate it and stuff like that. With the Python thing, I can create variables, right? A equals hello. And then I have that variable. But the second I quit out, whoops, exit. Sorry. I lose all those variables, right? If I go back in here and I type A, it'll say A is not defined. Cool? Okay. So that's kind of true here. We have not written any JavaScript over here. We haven't written any JavaScript over here. If I try to do A, well, it'll try to auto format for me, so that's not working. Let's do X. Say uncaught reference X is not defined. Makes sense? We can say let X equal 1. And now I have X, right? I close out of that. This up again. Oh, come on. Why does it got to open up over here every time? I think you see where I'm going, right? X will be gone. See, it really wants to fill in for me. X is not defined. Cool. So now what happens? This is where the console is a little bit different, right? So let's come over here and let's actually define a variable. Let's say let name equal Josh. Let's refresh this. And now, not only can I write any JavaScript I want down here, I have access to any of the variables, any JavaScript that I sent over, right? So if I do name and hit enter, I get Josh, right? So I have that variable. And we can confirm that if we go to sources here. This will show us everything that was sent over to the browser, right? And usually this might be a big directory of stuff, but we only have the index.html file, and then here's that script file that we wrote, right? It's living in the browser now and running in the browser. So even though I wrote it and it's on my local machine, right? It's like that code gets sent into the browser and the browser runs it, right? And the browser can deal with it. So this is what I was talking about, like when we were drawing all that shit on the board, and I was telling you the browser is really powerful and it does a lot of things. It's constantly listening to what you're doing. It's running that JavaScript code, waiting to react, and it's also parsing out the HTML. When it gets the HTML, it looks like this. It knows how to parse it out into something that we can read. Cool. So we all good on that? Okay. So now let's say let's talk about what browser storage is and why I want to use it. So first of all, I just want to talk about like what it is. It's really just an object. Oh my God, I remember the shortcuts for this. Okay, it's an object, right? So in JavaScript, if I wanted to save a bunch of data, I could save it in an object. And look, actually, I don't know if we'll get to the the to-do list completely. We might start it a little bit, but let's say we were starting it and we wanted to think about how do I want to store each to-do, right? How do I want to store the things I want to do? We could make a class, and we probably should, but we're not going to do that right now. Let's just think of the simplest way we could store the to-do. And it might just be in a object literal, like in the JavaScript equivalent of a dictionary, right? Because I think the things I would want to say is like save would be like to-do equals, and then I'd probably just want like the, I don't know, body, which would be like, you know, go to the store. And then I might want to save like is done, right? Or did I complete that task? We could start it out at false, right? I think at bare minimum, that's what I would want to know about each to-do task, right? Great, so I can hard code it right here. And then if we reload this and I look for my to-do, I have it right here, right? But this doesn't help me save any data, right? So if I if I change the to-do right here, to-do.isDone, and I say, you know what, I actually did finish that. I save that. For now, I have isDone is true. The second I refresh this, what's going to happen? Someone say it loud. I hear a lot of whispers. It's going to go back to false. We need some energy in here. We'll demand it. Yeah. What the hell is this? I hate these autocomplete things. It's not, it's, what do I call it? To do. Back to false, right? Okay. So are we kind of clear getting an idea of how this JavaScript gets sent over and run here, right? Cool. Anything we hard code is just going to get overwritten. So the normal way to do this would be to send this info back to the server and have it saved there, right? However, as apps become more complicated, the amount of work that we're putting on our server becomes more and more and more and more. A to-do list isn't bad at all. But larger applications, it starts to wear on the server. So, and we'll see this more as we get into React and stuff. What's been happening and what is continuing to happen is trying to offload as much of that processing work as we can onto the client's computer. Because at this point, client computers are super fast. Like, our computers are extremely fast. They're really efficient, and they can handle more of this work, right? So, and they can also hold on to some of this data for us. So there's a bunch of different ways to do that. One way we do that is by just sending a ton of JavaScript over and having like bigger JavaScript files that like just are our application. And you'll start to hear this idea of like a one-page application where basically you just send the whole app to the person, right? And then you're just basically storing data on the back end. Another thing that we might want to do that we don't really want to save on the front end, we might want to save something called a token, right? So this is like, if you ever open Chrome, like open Chrome after closing it down, go back to Gmail and it logs you in, right? That's the local storage that we're getting to. The local storage for that domain has saved something called a token, right? And it's this huge long string of characters. And what it does is when you go there, it will send it back immediately. And if it matches something in the database, it won't ask you for the password. It'll be like, you know what, this person already signed in. We saved this token on their browser. Just give them, don't make them sign in again. They're already signed in. I've confirmed that, right? So these are some ways that we might use local storage. I just want to slip that in there because building a to-do with local storage is a good exercise, but it's probably not the best way because local storage data is easy to lose. In fact, which we'll get to. Yeah, go ahead.
So is that where that token, does that come into play with like, if you usually have like the checkbox where it's like, hey, remember my information?
Yeah.
If you don't check that, then it just doesn't remember that token?
Well, in that case with the checkbox where they're giving you the option, probably. But a lot of these sites are just setting local shit in your local storage without you knowing it. In fact, if you go to any site, I was doing this yesterday. I was on Stack Overflow. Let's see if it does it again. And I just went inspect, and this is jumping ahead a little bit, but you can access local storage by just typing in local storage, and they're saving some key here. I'm not signed in. I don't know why, right? I wanted to research this more and figure out exactly why they're saving this and what this is helping them do. Sometimes it's like search engine optimization stuff, maybe, right? Or it might be like saving your location because like if you're in a certain part in the US, they might return, or in the world, they might return different search results. It might be doing stuff like that. It can get very complicated. The point is it's a way for us to store data on the client side so that we can come back and use it later, right? Okay, so we took a quick look at it. So now if I look at the local storage here for this page that we created, oh, it's got something in it because I ran something before. Hold on. Figure it out. Okay, so local storage, empty local storage. You can see it looks like an object. I zoom in here now. It's got the curly brackets, and then it just has one basically key value pair, which is length. That gets that by default, right?
The local storage just for the browser, or
yeah,
the machine itself? The
browser. So it just lives in the browser, and it's connected to. So like, if I go to any Stack Overflow / anything has its own local storage, right? Google / wouldn't be anything, but like a LinkedIn / anything has its own local storage. The browser keeps track of it by domain.
So if I use like Firefox, it'll look.
Absolutely, yeah. It probably probably has its own local storage, but it won't get Google's or the Chrome's, right? It's specific to the browser. Okay. Okay, so from here, so local storage is just an object, and it's an object that I can save stuff in. So the way I do that is by doing local storage dot set item, and then I just provide it a key value pair, right? So we can say I don't know, number and then the value, 33, enter. Cool. Now I'm going to check local storage, and you can see that my value is there, right? So now if I'm going to close out of this, I'm going to close out of this. We'll close Chrome completely. And then we'll open it again. Oh, that's true. Like in the console?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it won't throw it over there. Come back here, we'll inspect. Get rid of this thing. My local storage still has number 33. Cool.
But it's not going to go to your file here.
No, so that's a great question. So like, what's the next step of this, right? If we want to take this further. So I'm setting it here in my browser, right? But what I would really rather do is get information from the user and save it. That's probably how I would want to do my to-do, right? And then also I want to access it here, right? Which I can do. We can do this. We can say, let's see, how do we do this? We'll say local storage dot, I think it's get item, and then we'll say number. So I can save this to a variable. Let's say, just say let my num equal this. Okay, so I'm gonna, when I run this again, when I rerun this, instead of, and it's the same thing as what I was doing down here, right? But what it's gonna do is it's gonna grab number, it's gonna save it here, right? So let's like prove that to ourselves by then, let's do something to my num. Let's say my num, let's say plus, no, equals, wait a minute. This is annoying because it's a string. It's annoying because it's a string. So you can only save strings in local storage. You can't save integers, right? Which is frustrating. And it's also frustrating when you want to save like a whole object, right? You have to parse it out and parse it back. We'll get to that in a second. But let's just say, yeah, that's great. I'm like overcomplicating it, and that is perfect. That's exactly what we should do. I know. Whoops. Okay, cool. So now we'll go back over here. If I refresh, it'll grab 33 and console log it, right? We can also set new stuff here. So we could say local storage dot set item. Let's get rid of that. Say like city, Chicago. Come back over here, we'll refresh, and now if I check local storage, it's gonna have added Chicago there too. Cool. Okay. Other questions? Where did you guys get with the to-do? What was tripping you up, or did people get to it?
It's too much.
Too much?
Like he was really late by the time I got to call. So the first local storage one.
I think before you do the to-do, because the to-do is kind of annoying.
It's a little annoying.
I mean, it would be a lot funner and simpler to do first, like, I don't know, a stupid game where you keep track of your score, and then you come back and you say, hello, whoever you are, your hash score is this, and then you play again, or something. It'd be funner.
Should we, would you like me to go through, like, let's make a form, let's save stuff, let's override stuff, or does it make sense? Yes? Yes? Okay. Okay, let's hook it up to a form. So here's what I do every time I need to make a form. And I usually copy this exact one and then just build it out from here. Steal this, and since we're gonna have the simplest form ever, all right, let's put a form here. This is a little bit flying by the seat of my pants, so please bear with me. For action, we're just gonna put, oops, that for now.
What is hashtag?
It's just kind of a placeholder. It doesn't mean anything. Anytime I see someone put a placeholder, they put the hashtag. So I just like to fall in line, Holly, right, and just do what I'm told. Play by the rules. Yeah. Let's say it's label for. We'll just call it input. call this input. We'll get rid of the value. We don't want that. Say text, that's fine. We don't need these. So we should just have a submit. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, so we have a submit button right here. And maybe, I guess what we'll do is we'll just say, you can type in we'll get the first part of to do done. So you type in a to do and it'll save it in local storage. We'll see what we get from there, okay? Okay, so let's see, I have that. So let's come back over here and we can get rid of this stuff. And we can do, okay, so whenever I want to get data from a form, I can do two things. I can tell the data where to go in the action, and I'll just send it to my backend, right? But we don't want to do that. We want to get the data and handle it on the front end, right? So there's 3 steps to that. 3 steps to that. Whenever I want to do that. First, I want to do an event listener. Did you talk about event listeners yesterday? What does an event listener do? Can someone help me out here? It listens for events. Like what kind of events, Bobby? Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. Scrolling, clicking, submitting, which is what we're going to do. So I want to listen for whenever someone tries to submit this form. That's my first thing I want to do. So let's not even worry about the rest. So I need to get the form. So let's just call it form. And did I give it an ID? Let's give it an ID. So yeah, ID equals, yeah, let's call it something a little bit better. Okay, but I don't want to call it form because I don't want to call it an HTML thing that exists. So let's just call it to do, what am I doing? To do form, something like that. And then I'm going to do document dot query selector. No.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Is there a difference between query selector and get element by ID?
Not as far as I know. I call it to do form.
Yeah.
Cool. And then what we can do is we can run this again, and then let's see if that exists. Cool, it does, right? So we can check and make sure it's actually grabbing that form. So we got it. So now that we have it, we can put an event listener on it. Form.add event listener. The event we're listening for is submit. And then we pass it a function to run. That. And then just to make sure this is working, I'm just going to console.log is working. So what this is saying is I'm grabbing, every time I load this file, I'm going to grab the form. Did you talk about the document? So you guys, let's review the document real quick. So you have actually access to a bunch of like things that behave very much like objects or are objects in the browser, right? So one we're talking about right now is local storage. That's a thing you have. There's another thing called session storage. This will not save after you close, right? It'll save stuff while the browser's open, but it won't save it while it's closed, right? We use it for different things. There's another one called window, which represents, it's an object that represents the whole viewport, right? So you can call functions on this and tell the window to resize itself and do all sorts of stuff, right? So this is how you would interact with the window. The main one that we usually end up interacting with almost all the time when we're writing JavaScript for the front end is the document. And the document, you can see, that looks a little bit different. It's basically the JavaScript representation of the whole page, right, of the HTML. That's what the document is. And you hear it called the DOM, right, the document object model. And it's just, it's kind of exactly that, right? It's like it's a JavaScript model, or it's a model that we can interact with JavaScript of the page, right? So we're not, because HTML is just text. So I'm not literally grabbing the text of the form. I'm grabbing what the browser parsed out and turned into part of the DOM, right? And that's why I can call methods on it and stuff like that. Cool. So that's why we're doing document all the time, because everything lives in document. It's like the parent of the whole page. So anytime I want to get to anything in the page, I got to start a document and dig my way down, right? Or use these very helpful selectors, right? Okay, so that's what I've done. I've said, hey, grab that whole document as soon as I load this page, and then run this query selector function on it, which just looks for what I pass it and returns it. Great, I've added my event listener. So now, and what I've said is add an event. Now, once you grab the form, add an event listener to it. Whenever anybody submits, run this function I'm passing you as a second argument. It takes 2 arguments, the event and then a function to run, basically just shit to do. And right now all I'm saying is I want you to just console log. Cool? So let's go back. Let's refresh this. I'm going to type some stuff in here. Nothing's going to happen with the data, but if I submit it, it happens so fast we don't see it. So let's do, yeah. So what's happening here? Did you guys see it super quick?
Yeah.
So what happens by default when I submit a form is, one, it tries to send everything to that action. And in fact, let's hold on. Let's look at this one more time. Refresh. Do a hard refresh. Get rid of this. Okay, so you saw it down here like flash, right? It flashed, but then it reloads the page. That's what a form does by default. It reloads the page. Also notice up here, see what happens up here to the URL when I submit something. It adds, this is a query parameter up here. So basically it takes the input and turns it into a key value pair and throws it up here and tries to send it to the server. We don't have to worry too much about how that works. But the biggest thing you should know, a form by default is going to try to send the data you put into it somewhere, and it's going to reload the page. That's the thing that's killing us right now. We do not want it to keep reloading the page, right? And when we use React, we don't want it to happen. Forms kind of now we work with under the hood, and we don't really use their default settings as much. So the way I tell it not to do all that default stuff is by doing prevent default, right? So I do e.prevent default, and now we should be fine. So let's do this, submit, and we have is working, right? And we should be able to do this over and over and over again. Cool. All right, almost there. Go ahead.
In that function parameter, that's
Oh,
something that you put up there. Or does that matter?
no, it totally matters, and we should talk about it real quick. And I should give it an actual name. We usually call it the event, right? E is an E, and let me. Everything you get, it's like you get an object for everything, right? So when the event fires, the event listener fires, it saves all this information about the event that just happened, right? And it puts it in a variable that it automatically passes to this function for me. So let's print it out and just see what it looks like. It'll look a little nonsensical, but. So we get event is trusted true, the type, the target, which we'll come back to, right? And you can you get all these methods and things that you can grab from the event that just happened. We're going to use it in a minute to get the data. Good question. Very good question. So let's keep it as event. Okay. So I've done the first part. And we're preventing default. So the next thing that I want to do is I need to get the data. And then I want to save it in the local storage, right? Those are the things that I want to do. So let's get the data. We get the data off the event, right? So let's say let data equal, I think it is event dot target dot, nope, event, yeah, values. I'm going to guess. Is it dot values? But with a form, you get an array. So is it this? No, I know what it is. Event.target.elements. I gotta look it up. Get form input from JavaScript. I obviously looked it up yesterday. It's like target. No. I think it is elements, but is it target elements? Let's try this. Event.target.elements 0 dot value. Cool. Here. Push this. Okay, we got it. Okay. So the event we just saw has a bunch of stuff. One attribute it has is target. Basically, it's like, what did I click on? What did I submit? What did I scroll over? Give me that exact thing. So in this case, it's the form. Forms specifically can have a bunch of inputs, right? So all those input values are saved in an array-like thing called elements. I just want the first one, and then I need the value of it. So it's a little annoying, but this is kind of how you end up working with a lot of stuff, right? You're just taking it one step at a time. What the hell is this thing? Cool. What the hell is the next thing inside of it? What the hell is the next? So you just drill it down. So we got the value. So now the last thing to do is to save it in local storage. And so I can do that by doing, what did we say? Local storage dot set item. And now here's where we kind of have a problem, right? It's like, what do I call the key? Because if I hard code it here, we're going to override it every time, right? If I call it to do, and then I pass it the data, let's see what happens. Over here, say go to store, submit, check local storage, to do, go to store. Those other ones that we had were still in there. But now if I do, I don't know, wash dishes, submit, check local storage. It has overwritten this one, right? I put it in there for something else. I don't know. I don't remember what I did. That's it. I want to do .clear. So let's clear everything. What do you guys think? How are we going to solve this problem? Like, what are we going to do here? How are we going to be able to save multiple to-dos in local storage?
What I did is I just left the
Go ahead. What's up?
What I did was I left the values and the keys be the same.
You let the value. Oh, okay. You let the values and the keys be the same. That is a way we could do it. We could definitely do that. Especially if we're just saving the. Right now, we're not saving it as an object, right? We're just saving the text. That might work. We could try that. Let's just do that. Data. Walk dog, get milk, get milk. Yeah, that's actually pretty. I don't see a huge problem. Although I don't know, actually, this has a space in it. I'm actually not sure now. I do local storage dot. I probably have to do this. Yeah. So that's not the end of the world. That works. Let's talk real quick about like parsing the data in and out is just another option, and then we can take a break. All right. Does someone have a question though? Yeah.
What kind of data can you save as the value for
Any string, just a string. But we can get away with objects by using JSON. So yeah.
Pull it as a string.
So let's do this. Let's instead say we want. What would really be nice is if we could do to-dos and save an array, right? And we have an array of all our to-dos. Does that make sense? But we're screwed because this is not going to work. Because if I go here and we try to do local storage dot set item to-dos, and then I just pass it this array. Let me do local storage dot to-dos. Just turned it into an empty string, right? Which is not what we want. So what we can do is we can use something called JSON.stringify. We talk about JSON. Do we know what JSON is? JSON is, yeah. So JSON is, it's just, so remember when we were formatting data with CSV files? It's just another way to format data. It's the simplest way to think about it, right? It's called JavaScript object notation, and the reason it's called that is because even though it's just a string, it looks a lot like, and it organizes itself a lot like a JavaScript object. So it uses curly brackets to indicate blocks of information. It uses colons to separate key value pairs, just like a JavaScript object. It also allows you to save lists of things in brackets, just like an array, right? But at the end of the day, it's a string. And if we don't convert it back and forth between string and object, then we can't do anything with it, right? Then we can't do anything with it in JavaScript. We can't do anything with the JavaScript. So what I'm telling JavaScript to do is say like, hey, take this JavaScript array and turn it into a string, right? So we do that first. Come back over here. To-dos. That didn't work. Why didn't it work? I hate it. Storage. To-dos. It's because I didn't make this a string. Hope that was why. Otherwise, I'm like, how did I do this yesterday? How did I do this yesterday? Why isn't this working now? JSON.stringify. Let me look at this other file.
What is it?
Because
It's not working. You're passing in an empty array, so it's just turning it into an empty string.
I thought it would still work. I thought it would show me the string, the array, but like the brackets, but in a string. But maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Because it clearly is not doing that. What did I do yesterday? Where is? What did I do here? My items. Where am I calling that?
I think you're using brackets instead of parentheses.
Where?
In, around the.
I want to save an array in here. That's what I'm trying to do, but it is not working.
Code, you only have parentheses, not brackets.
Where here?
Code, the one that you had up earlier, it's actually in parentheses at the very top.
Yeah, but I'm passing it items, which I thought was supposed to be an array.
Did you clarify that it was in the very top is a little variable?
Here, I'm doing it right here. Sorry, guys, this is lame. But this is to-dos. And here's where I did it. Local storage that set item to-dos, JSON.stringify this thing. Okay, let's try this. You know what? This isn't working because it's not saving. It's not saving anything.
Yeah,
But it's part of the event list, isn't it?
Yep. Thank you. That's the problem. Stupid. That's always the problem, man. Oh, I put it a line too high in the code. Thank you very much. That is the problem. Look at that. Look at those brackets. I freaking knew it. Okay. So thank you so much. Thank you. That would have driven me nuts. Okay. So now I have this, but it's just a string, right? If I call on it, I'm pretty sure if I try to do local storage to dos and I do 0 like this, Yeah, it's just going to give me, it's going to treat it like a string. It's just going to give me that thing, right? Not the thing it did. So I can convert it back by doing JSON.parse and then pass it local storage.todos. And now I get the array back. Make sense? Pretty cool? Pretty good. No, not cool at all?
No, that's good to know. Not cool. But good to know.
This was like, I was doing the to-do thing yesterday, but I tried to spend like the last like 35 or 40 minutes of the day on it. And once I got to this, like, oh my God, you got to unstring it and string it back every time, which is not that big of a deal. You write one function to do it for you, right? But I just got frustrated. It is frustrating. That's why, like, you wouldn't. This is a really good exercise, like building up this to-do thing. I would definitely recommend you do it. Like, it was fun up until I got to this point, and then it's still good. But I think ideally, if you really wanted a to-do list that was going to be a really good to-do list, you wouldn't want to save everything in local storage because it's not definite. That's why the things that get saved in local storage, like your session ID or something for Google, it's not if you clear your session data, then you just sign back in on Google and it resets it, right? You clear your session data here, all your list items are gone, right? Cool. Is that more than you ever wanted to know about local storage? Probably. Does anybody have any other questions? Because that's about all I have for this. All right, let's take 5, come back. I'll do a quick thing on Bootstrap, and then we'll be done.